Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2020 Second Sunday Vision Gala. Right on. Good job, you guys. You're a great studio audience. We're so happy to be here with our friends, and we are being totally COVID legit, so don't call the cops, okay? We're good. I want to just give you guys a quick recap because as we go into this, it's critical for us to say one thing at the top. God's been good. God has been so good. And it's so interesting how easily we as humans forget that. But we want to really just say that what tonight is us saying, hey, as easy as it is being human, to trend towards kind of a negative, nihilistic view of life. When you look back, you see footprints, you see fingerprints, you see signs of a life that is over and in between all of us that wants good for you and for me. And so we're going to tell 4 stories tonight that illustrate what God's up to in Jesus' name on planet Earth today, specifically at Second Sunday. And I'm so excited for these guys to share their stories. That's what they're going to do. We've told them from the get-go, we're just having a conversation, and that's all we're doing. You guys are eavesdropping. But before we do that, I want to talk to you guys real quick about where we've been. We're a church of around 50 to 75 people that have been in existence for around 2.5 years. And we've seen God do amazing things. We came, my wife and I, from Norway. We were there for a year back in 2010. And right around that time, we realized that a lot of the world, in Europe in particular, is kind of like God schmod. They're kind of like been there, done that with Christianity. And there was this deep kind of disillusionment with organized religion that we felt. Well, when we came back to San Diego in 2011, we felt that same vibe. Our kids started going to school in a downtown school, and in particular, East Village and Mid-City, Hillcrest, we were vibing a sense that is much like what we experienced in Europe. What we felt can be statistically represented in this. 15% of the population goes to church. 85% of the population doesn't. There is no paradigm. There is no sense that going to church would be a legitimate choice on a Sunday afternoon for 85% of the population. For people who had had an experience of Jesus and for whom Jesus was very vibrantly real to us, this was weird. And we wanted to begin to host a conversation with people who we would represent as kind of in the blue ocean. The blue ocean is that area where people are kind of not very exercised in the ideas of Christ and his teachings and what he did on planet Earth. But there's this other side, the red ocean, which are people you would represent as Christ followers, Christians. And it seemed to us that churches were kind of fighting over Christians instead of having a conversation with people who were not Christ followers. And so for us, one of the key critical calls on our family was to leave a church we dearly loved. And we went with their blessing to enter what we would describe as a post-Christian neighborhood, a post-Christian community, a community that more people had issues with organized religion than didn't. And it's been a ride, you guys. It has been an absolute ride. Since we left Journey, the sending church that we came from, we started 2 conversation groups. And those conversation groups were so lit up with questions and curiosity because a lot of the people in those conversation groups were asking similar questions to the neighborhoods we were going to. We put on events in the neighborhood because we knew that at the core of what God was doing, we wanted to see reconciliation. We knew that what God's doing on planet Earth, in a word, is reconciliation. That's why Jesus came, to reconcile us to God. And when God reconciles us to himself, we believe something like comprehensive reconciliation takes place. So we were throwing these events, and we were meeting people in the neighborhood. We knew part of what this meant was establishing a community in East Village. So we prayed for a place. And we prayer walked for about 2 years, praying that God would give us a space. And sure enough, he did. An ugly green warehouse. I mean, this thing was ugly, and it had more pigeon poop than I think any warehouse I've ever seen. In fact, it got ignited one day and kind of burned up the place a little bit. It was gnarly, but you know what? It was a block from where we sensed God calling us to be. We wanted to take that warehouse and make it a place that could be free of church trappings. We wanted it to be a place that didn't belong to the church, quote unquote, but to the community, a place where the community could call it their own. And it took a lot of blood, it took a lot of sweat, and it took a lot of resource, but it slowly came to fruition. And we began to see this place become not just a space for our church, but man, when we opened Gentile Coffee just a few months later, the place was bustling. In fact, a few months after that, people were writing it up in magazines as one of the hot spots in downtown San Diego. And what came out of that was an incredible host of people. We got to meet people, which was the whole reason why we did it. We got to meet people who didn't share our presuppositions on reality. I think of Dylan, I think of Jess, I think of Justin, I think of Edna, Nick, Anna, Rochelle, Matt, Steve, Daisy, Rory, and Wendy, and so many others. All because we created a space that was safe. A church without walls, available to the community, leaning in, a place where people could come in, ask questions, go at their pace, and seek to understand who Jesus really is. I don't think people knew it, but underlying our vision was the hope that God would install realities. We didn't want to just tell great ideas. We wanted to install realities, garden realities. And so we painted that on the side of our building. This is a mural that you're looking at right now that was created by Michael Chandler. I love it. It's still on the wall today. And it is a depiction of God creating a garden in East Village. It's what we wanted to see happen. We wanted to see those new realities, which can be best described as garden realities, realities of connectivity resulting in generativity. We wanted to see those happen. Thanks to John Heyman and Michael Chandler for really leading the way on that mural. For us, garden meant those two realities of connectivity and generativity. And that's what God's been doing. He connected us to people in such a powerful way that the last 2.5 years, many types of people, interesting people, devout people, angry people, seeking people, weird people. This is a picture of some of those weird people. We met them all. And it was an amazing place to join in with these people who were sharing some of the similar questions we had. To facilitate connection, we did so many fun things. We did pop-up events. We partnered with the Hot Yoga Dome people. They would bring in a huge hot yoga inflatable dome into our warehouse. That was a blast, I guess.
A disaster.
That was a bit of a disaster.
It was July, and we did hot yoga
Yes.
with no walls.
It got up to about 130 in that dome, by the way. We had Edge Cycle in there. They were doing their thing. We threw parties. The Halloween party we had one year was just unbelievable. We saw people from all the surrounding apartment buildings come into our space, and we got to meet them and really carry on relationships with them on into the future. We helped local artists achieve their visions. One year we had, the first year we were in existence, this woman came to me and she had a vision for a fashion show that would be a fundraiser for suicide prevention, because she realized that all of her friends and her friends' friends were seeing their friends take their lives. And so we got to be able to partner with them and pull that off in our space. We were able to give it to them for free. We hosted art shows. We became great friends with New School of Art. Local business owners like Rochelle, and you can see her in this picture right here. She became such a good friend. In fact, she let us use her space for our children's ministry. What an incredible woman she is. We partnered with community efforts, something we called First Fridays. This was basically a partnership of a bunch of businesses in East Village. We were right at the center of that. And we got to meet all of these different business owners, and we got to help them realize their vision. It was an incredible time. But we always knew that the full-scale reconciliation we were seeking started with people being reconciled to God. So we worshiped. We sought to establish actual spiritual realities in our space and in our neighborhood. I've not looked at the crime rate, but I bet you it's different since we came here. I bet you things have shifted. And here's why I would say that. On many accounts, people would come into our space and they would say, I feel something different here. On one account, this man from Japan who was in town for a convention was in our space, and he was buying one of our church t-shirts. He didn't know we were a church. He didn't know a church met in there regularly. But he said to me in broken English that day, I feel peace here. Now, if that was just a lone incident, it wouldn't really mean a whole heck of a lot. But y'all, I heard that regularly. Because realities were actually being established through us giving our world back to God, which is what we believed and what we still believe worship is. We sought to engage culture with the love of Jesus in creative ways. So we put on a creativity tour. We took people out in downtown. We did yoga. We did all kinds of explorative efforts to help people realize and come into an understanding of who God is and who Jesus is. It was a powerful time. All the while, God was teaching us what he wanted to do. We had ideas, but we didn't want to lean on our bag of tricks. From the beginning, we have wanted to see what Jesus wanted to do. And he kept bringing us back to reconciliation. God was about reconciling people to himself so that they could be reconciled to each other, themselves, and nature. We were getting it slowly. It was about relationship. It was about communion. But we kept getting hit. It was harder and easier than we ever thought it would be, this church planning thing. Resistance was real. And the powers that be in East Village didn't like our live music. And so we were asked to stop playing live music. After a long fight, and it wasn't a fight on our side, it was more or less us getting shut down from one side, we lost our space. And it's been hard, I'll be honest. It hasn't been great. But it has also been really great. I know. How can we say that? It sounds paradoxical, but that's how God works. In the midst of the hard stuff, something beautiful is happening. And we found ourselves at a place called Studio 710. And we made a friend with Jeffrey. Jeffrey is a stud. And we have to just pause right now and just say, Jeffrey has been such a blessing to us. Can I get a witness? This place has really taken Second Sunday into its arms and held us and encouraged us. And the partnership that is developed here is next level and otherworldly. And I won't get into it. But we picked up right where we left off, serving the community, picking up trash whenever we would come together for worship. That's a picture of Josh there. Josh and Dylan, you guys, good-looking dudes. And you guys picked up trash like nobody I've ever seen in my life. Amazing. We picked up right where we left off. And then 2020, it hit. I saw somebody wearing a T-shirt by Stephen King. A T-shirt, and it said 2020 brought to you by Stephen King. I thought that was funny. 2020 hit, and it was so good to begin to begin with. I mean, we had our worship team go out to Joshua Tree. They were writing songs. We're going to release our new EP. It'll be out before 2030, I promise. We quickly outgrew 710 and we moved to J11, a location closer to the ballpark and a little bit more central to our liking. Things were going really good. But all the moves we sensed were kind of also eroding our momentum. Uncertainty was seemingly around every corner, and then COVID. So without any streaming infrastructure, we tried filming our first online service in my house. That was the worst idea we've ever had. If you saw that service, we're sorry. It was that bad. But you know, the ways of the Lord, which are kind of hidden to us, they slowly began to emerge. Think about it. We had just met Jeffrey Brown, the owner of Studio 710, a premier studio in downtown San Diego that has all the streaming infrastructure you could ever want. And so we immediately called Jeffrey and we said, hey, dude, can you help us in the midst of COVID? And homeboy threw down and he said, yeah, let's do this. Man, we not only were able to continue to I guess, televise or stream our services, but we were able to do the E-Suite, something that we do with E3 Civic High, where we prop up student entrepreneurs, and we were able to raise some money for them, and we were able to do an online event with them because Jeffrey and Studio 710. And so that departure from our warehouse actually resulted in us finding our rescuer down the road. It was kind of cool, and I'm still celebrating that aspect of what God's been doing. And you know what? The partnership with Jeffrey and Studio 710 has evolved because he's evolved. He has started a baking company, Isola Bakery. I was wondering, what is a baking company? But it's called a bakery, right? And he is making the best bread in East Village, and I think San Diego County. So on occasion, we'll do bread drops. We'll take tons of bread to Leah's house, which is a local apartment building, as well as families at E3 Civic High who are in need. It's been an incredible partnership. Our relationship with E3 has grown, too, through Paul Smith, who's going to be sharing down the road. We've been able to join with the Fisher Family Foundation, and we do food distributions the first and third weeks of every month. And this last week, we were able to feed over 50 families Thanksgiving dinners, which is rad, and it was an incredible time. The creativity that COVID has spawned is amazing. We did something we've never done for our Easter services. We made Easter packets for the neighborhood, which were assembled in COVID-friendly ways and gave us a way to practically love the neighborhood. We held vigil with those who were experiencing oppression because the prophet Amos in chapter 5, verses 23 through 24 tells us that justice is more dear to the heart of God than even our worship services. We hosted a conversation led by Paul Smith around the book, Be the Bridge, because we could not be about reconciliation. We celebrated the connections God has made long ago in this community with Archie and MBKC, who we got to be on the boat with again this August, and that was incredible. And we continue to partner with them. If you want to come out on December 19th at the Legacy Center, we'll be partnering with them then. So many things have happened. You know, I want to just say, yay, God. But I also want to say something that brings us into the four stories we're going to be talking about tonight. Perhaps you've heard it said, necessity is the mother of invention. I would like to add to that. Catastrophe is the mother of necessity. Let me say that again and not lisp. Catastrophe is the mother of necessity. Whenever you find yourself in a catastrophe, whenever things go down and not well, that's when we have a keen awareness of what really matters in life. C.S. Lewis says it like this, that God shouts in our suffering. You know, whenever you find yourself up against it and you all of a sudden kind of look to heaven seeking God. It's not an accident, because catastrophe is the mother of necessity. It helps us see what really matters. In all of our wins, in all of our failures over the last 2.5 years, we are clear on one thing: God is doing reconciliation. And these 4 stories that we're going to go into right now tell the story of reconciliation. So I want to introduce you to my friend Jonas. And Jonas is going to share his story. I've loved getting to know Jonas over the last year. He and Nadia came with us on the Mosaic trip. And I've seen this story play out in your life, bro. And so I would love for you to just talk to us about what reconciliation has meant for you.
Yeah, it's been a long and really amazing process, to say the least. But yeah, let me start with a little bit of context, and then I'll get into the real meat and potatoes. So, at a young age, a barrier was formed in my mind. It was like a wall of ice standing between myself and the future that God had for me. It was built by the enemy's hand with my permission. It was held together by lies I believed about myself, the words others had spoken over me, and a disbelief that God would follow through on his promises. When I was young, being in church felt like being in a maze that Jesus was at the center of, but I could only ever find the exit. The people I knew who had made it to the center of the maze exuded a type of joy and love and faith that I found hard to grasp for myself. I saw God work through them in beautiful ways, and although I wanted to know Jesus like they did, I always chose to keep sort of just a comfortable distance from him. So living vicariously through other people's faith in God felt a lot safer, but it didn't offer me any kind of stability, and it definitely left me vulnerable to the world. So breaking through the wall of ice between me and God had always felt impossible, and I found comfort in the idea that God would destroy it for me in the future at some point. But for so long, I never cared to understand how, and I never wanted to accept the personal responsibility that it would require from me. So I just ran in the opposite direction, further away from God, and in turn, further away from what was really good. My world felt like a void where I could do anything I wanted, but all I wanted to do was just chase whatever felt fulfilling in that moment. So I took the lies that formed the wall between me and God, and I chose to become them. I indulged in vices. I was looking for a quick fix in people and in fleeting moments to try to satiate like my own emptiness. And I kept coming up empty. I felt disconnected from myself, from God, from people, and just from reality as a whole. I felt like I was gasping for air without a long enough moment to catch my breath, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I asked God to show himself to me in a way that I just couldn't refute, because I tend to try to like analyze everything to a finite detail. And so I was just like, God, prove yourself, basically. And I asked him to shake up my world. I told him that I was ready to give him everything, but first I just needed to know that he was real. Coming from my background, like this was now for me and it wasn't for anyone else. And so he started to show up for me, and he started to reveal himself in ways that were so beautiful and just specific to who I am and just curated to me. And the more I chose to invite him to show up, the more he would do so in ways that I just couldn't reason around, and I couldn't chalk it down to be a coincidence. I asked him to prove himself to me, and he did so in a way that only he could have. I felt like I knew him personally for the first time, and I just started to go where he called me at that point. I was skeptical, but I was open, and this posture of openness led me to go to Awaken, which is a church in San Diego. So I found myself back in that maze of church, but this time it felt a lot different. God challenged me to have faith before I felt like I did, which just feels like super counterintuitive, but it's just how he works. So he challenged me to have faith before I felt like I did, to trust him when I couldn't see, to jump when I didn't know where I would land, and to listen to his voice as if he was actually telling the truth. So as I followed him where he led, I came into freedom after freedom. My faith grew fast, and I just shed the layers that the years in the void had put on me. So finally, I'd made it to the center of the maze, and what I found there wasn't what I expected at all. God brought me back face to face with that wall of ice that I was describing in the beginning. But this time I knew that I was ready to just take it on. And the wall was made up of old lies. And at this point, they couldn't stand against what God had now shown me to be true about himself, about myself, and about reality. So as I spoke it out loud, the warmth of the truth that he showed me began to unravel and melt this impenetrable ice wall. And I found myself swimming in its tumultuous waters, and together we sorted through the mess. And the whole time, God just kept me in his hands and he kept me afloat. And eventually, just those waters receded, and the wall that was left in front of me was just no longer menacing, and it felt so much smaller, and it just felt like that was holding me back, you know? And so that's when God brought me to Second Sunday. And we're a small community with a heart for vulnerability, a desire to be there for one another in our struggles, and a call to reach the unreached, the blue ocean that you're talking about. And it's awesome. And so healing and growing and learning to love and to be loved are really uncomfortable pursuits. They're really challenging, but it's absolutely what Jesus calls us to do. As I've leaned in this year with everyone at Second Sunday, I've come to understand the importance and the beauty of community in a way that I have really never known. So that wall, what I'm left with now is so thin and it's so just frail. It's only just a skeleton of its once intimidating kind of stature. And what I see now is that this ice isn't for me to break through alone. It was always meant to be a collaborative effort between me and God, and now alongside a community of people doing the same thing. Yeah. So I just feel that it's time to break through and to do it reconciled to God. Wow. Yeah.
That's so money. Thanks,
That's
bro.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Like a KPBS talk show. Thank you.
A little bit about me.
Thank you, Jonas. Unbelievable, dude. I just loved everything you said. Nadia, we've loved getting to know you and Jonas. You guys are so hugely creative, and I'm so excited. You guys should know Nadia is starting a new online business, and we want you to hit it hard when that launches. We'll definitely put it all over our Insta. But what has reconciliation meant for you?
Well, I've never felt more like myself than I have with God, but it wasn't always like that. From a very young age, rejection took root in my life and seemed to grow bigger and uglier the older that I got. My struggle with how I perceived myself was ongoing due to how society always seemed so eager to tell me who I wasn't. Shy and quiet were repeatedly tossed around, painted in a way to make it appear as a disability, but I genuinely felt indifferent on the inside. Those words just never rang true in my spirit. I'm not quiet, I'm not shy, but people were so quick to put me in this specific limiting box and strip me of my personality and voice before they even attempted to get to know me. I never understood why others kept shutting their doors in my face, so I figured I was to blame. But there was maybe there was something wrong with me. Because of how often these words were spoken over me, I eventually accepted and took on the lies as my truth. The worst part about having dealt with rejection was that I felt so alone in the struggle. The longer I stayed in that box, the more familiar I became with its walls, slowly forgetting who I was before I made it my home. The few times I mustered enough courage to peek or step out of it, it was only a matter of minutes before I was pushed back in. I figured it was safer and less of a hassle to just go with the flow than to fight it. As my wounds grew deeper, I desired friendship, connection, and a sense of belonging above all else. And it was this desire that would then cause for others to take advantage of me over the years. However, most of the time I would allow it because I preferred some sort of connection over none whatsoever. I was bullied and teased by my peers, even by my friends. I was used, abused, and deemed unworthy of love in romantic relationships. Even in the confines of my family home, I never felt fully seen or understood by my parents. Rejection manifested into an eating disorder, depression, and a mindset of my life having no value or meaning. If society didn't want me, then what was the point? As a kid, church was a place you went to for Easter and for Christmas. I grew up in a Catholic Muslim household, and while I knew of God's existence, I didn't really know much about him. I never saw him as a God you could actually have a close personal relationship with. Due to feeling detached from those around me in the world, I sought attachment through New Age to the universe at the age of 13, where I became infatuated with the teachings of psychics, astrology, and reincarnation. My heart hungered for a sense of belonging, but I didn't know what spiritual arena I was playing in. It didn't heal my wounds or make rejection go away. In fact, it made life seem heavier in ways, but since I was experiencing the supernatural, I naively assumed that I was onto something good. I developed a close relationship with a psychic woman who I viewed as my communication with the universe. She would give me insight to secret information regarding anything I asked her about. I felt like I had the secret menu to life in the palm of my hands. In fact, my involvement with New Age made me view Christianity and a relationship with God as limiting. Funny enough, had I listened to her last piece of advice, I wouldn't have pursued the romantic relationship I am in now with this guy, which is ultimately what led to my relationship with God. On February 12th of 2019, I watched a girl's testimony on YouTube where she discussed her journey from New Age to Christianity. That following Sunday, I gave my life to Jesus, and I've never looked back. It's so important that we share our wounds and reveal our scars because you never know whose life they might change. Hers changed mine. And had it not been for her testimony, I wouldn't be sitting here telling this story.
Wow.
That sense of connection, belonging, acceptance, support, and love that I had relentlessly searched for, I've now found all in God. Coming from someone who didn't really know God to someone who had no interest in God, let me tell you, I feel like my life has so much value and meaning now. To anyone who struggled with rejection, just know that one day all the scars on your heart will make sense. This year has been a process of God helping me to remember who I am in Him, apart from my family, friends, and job. I never had the experience living on my own up until this year. Being, part of it's missing, but being forced to be socially distant and then also being let go from my job and just God ridding me of all those other distractions, it left me with no other choice but to confront myself in old wounds. Rejection and abandonment being my biggest oppressors, it's been a long, challenging process of forgiveness, self-love, and learning how to detach the past from my present. In a bigger church community, it's easier to get lost in the crowd, giving rejection an excuse to play a role. And it wasn't until I started going to Second Sunday that I found the beautiful community I had been searching for. God knows I desperately crave solid, stable female friendships, but it's been a process of unlearning how to look for rejection in the friendships I pursue and the places I now go. I still have lots of healing to do, and although I still face challenges from time to time, I don't feel alone in the process anymore because of God. So I would define this year as the year of reconciliation of self.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nadia. It's amazing. Yeah. I'm blown away at just how community keeps coming back as kind of a manifestation of reconciliation. And that's been one of the key learnings for us, that the whole canvas of God's work is the interpersonal relationships that we inhabit. and how critical reconciliation to yourself is to getting on in those and experiencing the vistas of those relationships that God has for us. And you're right, Jonas, you said it. It's hard. It's gnarly.
It's probably the hardest pursuit.
Yeah.
Vulnerability and honesty and love at the same time.
Oh, shoot, that's a cocktail. Yeah. And which is kind of been a bit of the same thing for you, Paul. As you, Paul is part of our huddles. I'll talk about those in a second, but he calls them emotional fight club because they're so raw and heavy. And we just wanted to talk to you, wanted you to talk to us about what reconciliation has meant for you.
Well, I mean, talking about reconciliation, it's a unique space to be in, and talking about how I actually got here is kind of like a little bit of a journey too. I work at the school close to what was Gentile Coffee in the warehouse, and I often found myself just going there, and as you mentioned before, just having this sense of peace when walking into the room. And I was like, I don't know why, but I kept going. I didn't know that it was a church. I didn't know that that's what it was about. But
Wow.
having moved to East County a year or so before, and East County has a unique history, and attempting to go to church and try and connect with folks, it just didn't seem right. But I knew that's what I wanted. I needed it. I needed a relationship. But I know that type of reconciliation that needs to be made with, steps and choices that we make, they have to be, brought full circle. But just having the connection with people around, and I was just like, I don't know. And I think it was just one day where I think you said that, hey, we see this guy out in front of the school and he's talking to people and he just seems like, hey, come through, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And begrudgingly,
You owned that corner.
I mean, it fell into what we wouldn't call my wheelhouse.
Yeah, totally.
It's something to do, and just being out when I have like a task, I'm like, okay. For my military, it's like attack the hill. It's like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as just the connection and relationship that I really wanted to have, it was just something that I was longing for, and I didn't think that because of COVID and the political landscape we lived through, I would experience some of the things that I did. But God's timing is perfect, because I was actually seeking, and I didn't really know how broken I was. And I can recall a number of times where you encouraged me. It's like, we want to go through this book, Latasha Morrison's Be the Bridge. And so I was thinking like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not a teacher. I'm not doing that. But it brought such deliverance from the feelings and thoughts that I had. And to know that there were individuals within our community that was just, they were open and they were willing to embrace it. And I was like, well, what do I need to do? And it's just be, man. Just go. You don't have to pretend to be anything else. Just walk through the adventure and see how God's going to change your life. And I remember there were a number of times where I was there and I broke down, and I was like, I have this within me and I'm just so hurt. But everyone that was around just gave me that sense of like, it's okay to do that here. It's okay to be transparent, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that we're all in this process going together, and not trying to be more than I think that I am. We can all say, okay, we go to college, we get degrees, and we do this stuff, but it's a connection, and it was a relationship, and it's just saying, okay, I can reconcile with others, and I could be the bridge to help. And it's the challenges that, produce themselves with everyone, and it was just like, man, this is amazing. Everyone's really willing to open themselves up, to care. And when we talk about our community, it's like, what do we want to build? We want to build relationships with people that are definitely going to do something.
Yeah, I do.
Not just speaking about it,
Yeah.
but actually being about it, being about action. And that too is like scary. It's like Peter getting out of the boat. You want to walk on the water. Like,
Yeah.
it's scary, but we did it and we'll continue to do it. And then the places that we go, we just get to keep growing and living and loving, because we're all broken inside to some extent. But then that's what you talked about, the catastrophe. Now it's going to lead to something great, but it's just us. And it's so amazing what we get to do when we make ourselves available. And it was funny, just the things that I get to do when I talk to kids and talk to parents and talk to families and talk to, many different people, but just knowing how God's hand is involved in all of it. And today it was just so amazing for him to just kind of say, be still and know that I am. And I was like,
Come on.
okay,
That's it.
I'm just going to just be here.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. But it's the people giving of their hearts.
Wow.
And then that's so amazing to be able to have that. So being reconciled with others is a big thing. And I
Yeah.
can think we continue to do it.
Yeah. That's powerful, bro. Thank you guys so much. This is encouraging me, like, for real. Like, I'm not just saying that because I'm on camera. Like, I'm really encouraged.
And
by
I
it.
wasn't sure about this idea that you had, but this might be my favorite new way of worshiping. I feel so moved.
Yeah.
And as you guys are giving your stories
Yeah.
as a sacrifice right now, it's so moving and it's so helping me connect to you guys, but also to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is an offering. Yeah. You guys are so, thank you so much. Lauren,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm only a little bit nervous.
Okay,
I think
good.
I'm going to do okay.
Okay, good. It's been so good just seeing your process. I remember the first time you walked into the warehouse and just praying with you after that service, because God was already just kind of doing stuff in you. And why don't you talk to us about what reconciliation means to you?
Yeah, you're not wrong. From like the first message I heard from walking into the warehouse for the first time, I felt what I didn't have a word for, but I knew must be God. I remember talking to my friend Kelsey after and being like, what was that? That was crazy. was that God?
Was that God?
But I had been, I had felt a connection to something before. And so I wasn't surprised by it, but I was surprised that it could be for me. Me and my
Wow.
depression can be a little dark for the typical Christian community. And some Christian people my age I had talked to had made me feel like I had already messed up too far to, turn back. And here I was in a community where telling me that was wrong, that I had a million chances and that God was for me,
Yeah.
not just for the, the perfect picture, perfect communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then even just the fact that Jay was willing to pray for me and bring me into that moment and give it because it felt so real and it was so heavy and it was so tangible that it was so scary to feel on my own. So right away I was brought into a community that would help me hold that space. And I think the two biggest parts, the most challenging things about coming into faith is trusting God, because his character isn't so intuned in my mind that I know and I can trust him at all times. But looking back, I get to look and see how far he's already brought me, and that all the things I thought were going to break me didn't. And I get to keep going and keep trying another day. It's also really hard and scary to trust community and to trust people. I move around a lot in the past, and so it kind of things felt temporary or unsafe in community, and God was asking me to be open and honest about myself with people, and I thought that was going to break me also, I said, God, if I show them everything, they're going to be out the door. They're going to be going the other way. I'm not going to have a community anymore.
Yeah.
But obviously that didn't happen, and I've gotten to learn how to trust. not only God, but people, and have a new sense of what love really is that it's not judgmental and it holds space for whatever you've been through and wherever you've been. Yeah, and just I think the biggest, if someone was like, Lauren, what has changed the most, since you've met God and since you've found your faith? And I think that just the knowing that I'm going to be okay and that I don't have to carry the things that weren't meant for me.
Wow.
And that, the heaviness and depression and the pressure, I've carried around for so long is that that's not meant for me. And that God can help me take that. It takes a lot of hard work. It's not comfy.
No.
It's a lot of tears, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And I think I was looking also, like, okay, God, fix me. I'm here. I'm ready to be healed. But you don't become unhealed just like that. And so becoming healed can take time. And so I found myself really going through the layers and layers of things, that I'm not meant to carry anymore and that God can take from me.
That's huge, Lauren.
It's really been a life-changing, just to wake up lighter and lighter every day. And it's not always easy, and it's not a straight line, Some days are harder than others, but I have this community that I can bring my pain to, and they can pray with me, and they can listen to me and hear me and not run away from me, which is what I was expecting or afraid of. Not having to be afraid is really, really what God and Jesus have done for me.
Wow. I've seen you do the battle. We've gone on long walks, you, Ing, and I, and
My favorite. I look forward to them every time.
we enjoy
She always
them.
sits right here in between
We
us.
sit her in between us. And one of the things that's been so powerful to me, and I think it's part of reconciliation, is that you've begun to speak to your brokenness with something. You've ditched the white flag. You've ditched I surrender to my depression. And you've said, no, I'm not made for this. There's something better for me. And that, homegirl, that's going to come through. And I'm just going to speak over you right now. In Jesus' name, your healing awaits you. And it's actually happening right now. And it's going to play out.
Even just being here tonight is healing in itself. And that, I had a lot of pushback from the enemy today. Like, what story are you going to share? What could you possibly say? And I think that's when you know that you have the most to share and the most to say.
Right.
Is when that pushback happens.
Yeah.
And you're doing a really good job, Lauren, showing up. You're showing up so well.
Yeah.
And one of the things you sent to our girls group this weekend that I want to quote you was the healing is in the work, right? And I do think that's so true.
I think the work, and it's so painful and so raw, and it can feel like, how is this possibly doing anything productive? Because it just feels so heavy. But that's where the reconciliation is. That's where the trust is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nadia and Jonas. Thanks, Ing.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hope that was real helpful.
I kind of held out on you because there was another thing that happened that I think was seismic in 2020. And it was this. We started these things called huddles. And huddles are what I referred to earlier and that Paul refers to as emotional fight clubs. But essentially what a huddle is where you get 12 girls into a space and 12 guys into a space. And it's no holds barred, tell your story. And one person will take an hour and a half and divulge areas of their life that maybe they've never told anybody before. The idea of huddles came from my brother, who's a church planner in the UK. And the reason why he did them is because he was sick of people playing church. Yeah. It's funny. I remember when I was in college with my wife, and she had an assignment where she had to go to an AA meeting and observe because she was a psychology major. So I went for her.
I didn't have time, really.
She didn't have time. I have never seen better church. It was the best church I had ever seen. I was 22, 23 at the time, and I was like, this is church. This is the real stuff. People struggling with addiction, struggling with life, struggling with false gods, struggling together. And it was then that I realized that, and if you have any time, go and watch The Biggest Little Farm. At the beginning, they're trying to fix the soil. And here's how you fix soil. Poop. That's how you fix soil. Brokenness is the soil fixer of the human heart. As we share in each other's brokenness, we share in the victories and the beauty of God. And I think that's because his healing comes into those spaces, because he's making us whole. And I think if there's a vision for 2021, it is reconciliation. It is reconciliation to God. It is the starting of more huddles. It is the opening of new spaces where we can hold conversations with broken people, lonely people who they go to their penthouse and they go into the parking garage in their Beamer, and they've got everything the world says that should make them happy, but they're not. They're lonely. They're alienated. You know why? Because they were made for God. They were made for God, and Jesus made the path very clear. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So that's what we're going to do into 2021. We're going to start more huddles. We're going to start more spaces. Heck, I even think we might even do a documentary with Studio 710 on what it means to be the church. I want to encourage you to just reflect on that phrase that we brought up a little while ago. Catastrophe is the mother of what is essential. Where has the brokenness in your life led you to realize, pointed to those things that are truly necessary? You are necessary to us. This boat don't float if you don't. I was going to try and rhyme, but it didn't work. This ship doesn't work if you guys aren't with us. There are several people who call themselves friends of Second Sunday. They don't come to Second Sunday. They just give money to Second Sunday. It's Giving Tuesday today. So bust out your wallet. Bust out the checkbook if you're old school. We need your help going into 2021. We need resources to start those spaces. We're not done with warehouse type spaces. In fact, maybe there's a partnership with Isola down the road. I don't know. But we're going forward with a beautiful vision of what God has for us. And we need resource, because here's what resource says. It says value. And if you value what's happening here, I know I do, we ask you to resource it. So whether you're a friend of Second Sunday or you're somebody who goes to Second Sunday, we want you to take very seriously seeing Second Sunday as a viable option for your year-end giving and your Giving Tuesday giving. Just so you know, my wife and I give sacrificially above and beyond, and it's because we see the value here. And just so you know, we have a close-up perspective on everything that's happening here. So it's not like we're not putting our money where our mouths are. And we would encourage you to do that as well. We love you all. We thank you for being with us in this space, which I believe was sacred and holy. And we really want to encourage you to give. So if you would like to give, you can text Second Sunday to 77977. Text Second Sunday to 77977, or you can go to your email. We probably have already emailed you an email today that has a donate button, and you can click on that. Or you can go to our website, secondsundaysd.com, and give there. We'd encourage you to do that today or before year end. We're going to close with a song, and this is a song we filmed a while back. And I just got to tell you a quick story about this song. Whenever we would play this song, it seemed a man who would come to the warehouse.
It was always a man.
It was always a man. Usually he had an accent of some sort, and they would come weeping to our warehouse. I'm not exaggerating. This happened 4 times. And I think it's because this song tells the gospel. It tells the story about how God invaded time and space for you because he's crazy about you. And that's how hungry people are. They're hungry for hope. They're hungry for Jesus. So we would encourage you to watch this and worship with us as we end this year's gala. Let's give it up for this year. God bless you guys for sharing. Thank you so much. God bless you guys. We will see you soon, and please do watch this video.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of a lie. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I. So will I. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty your void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch the breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I. So will If the stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roll your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. a hill you created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every breath designed in a work of art called love. If you know that you'll surrender, so will I can see your heart a billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I give it again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? If the one who never leaves the one behind.
Well, it's dark now.